Hello, this is Your Body, Mind, and Home, and today's video is for professional massage therapists. I'm going to go through a whole mixture of tips and tricks, concepts, techniques, a few techniques, different things that I've gleaned over the years, and hopefully no matter what your experience level is, there will be at least a few things that you'd like to incorporate into your practice. Let's start with a little bit of compression. So one of the things that I do at the beginning of each section of the body is I work a little bit through the linens. And that's because it just gives the person a chance to feel your touch and to get a sense of the pressure and to just get used to being touched. So I start with that, and then I will expose the area for working with oil using draping. Now, one thing to really remember is that you don't want to go underneath the draping ever. So if you need to go, sometimes the draping will move, sometimes you'll just realize you want to work a little bit further in. Instead of going under the draping, just move it back. It just feels less invasive for the person and just safer. So one of the things I'll just mention right now is I tend to like to have kind of a meditative approach and just sort of energy that I'm doing when I'm doing massage. So I know that when that doesn't apply to people that are doing PT in a big brightly lit room, but I'm going to be talking mostly about people coming in for a really deeply relaxing experience. And so one of the things that I do before a massage is I do some little rituals. And I know that when you're doing, 5-6 massages a day, it can be very difficult to kind of get into the right space every time you do a massage, but rituals can help a lot. So, and I'm sure you've talked about this in school, but in case you haven't, some people use candles, they light candles. Some people do a little affirmation or a little kind of, I hate to say prayer, but they'll do just a little, focus that maybe they'll just close their eyes for 15 seconds, just something to sort of bring their energy in. It's good to have focus without concentration. If people are thinking a lot, and this, when you're first starting, you're going to be thinking a lot, but if you're thinking a lot while you're doing massage, it just has a different feel to it. So, you want to be thinking, but just a little more focused on the, not the exact stroke that you're doing, but just the feeling of relaxation. I think effleurage and petrissage are very underrated in massage. There's something really soothing about touch, and even though I tend to do, I feel like I do moderately deep work, and that's what people tell me, that's what my clients tell me, but I always start with some effleurage and some petrissage because that has a really big effect on endorphins, getting those endorphins running, and that's always a good thing when you're giving massage. Another thing I just want to mention is the way you use your body. I know that they always tell you about using your whole body when you're in school, but it took me a really long time to figure out how to do that. And I think I kind of just started doing it myself because, as kind of a self-preservation mechanism. So as you can see, I'm I do a lot of movement when I'm doing massage. And I'm using the floor, I'm using gravity. You know, I'm using gravity when I do compression. And sometimes, you know, even when I'm doing, you know, doing something like this, I'm using gravity. But I also use the floor a lot. You can't really see my feet, but you know, I'm anchoring my feet and using my body to do a lot of this work. It feels very different if you don't move your body. And I've had massage therapists where the table was like above their waist and they were going like this a lot. And you can't get in very deeply, and it just ends up, it's hard for me to do because I'm so used to using my whole body. But, you know, even if you kind of do the same thing, first of all, it's a lot more strenuous on my arms and legs to keep my body still like this. But it's also, the experience that the client has is very different as well. So one of the things that I, you know, try to do is just, you know, get a certain amount of movement of my body into every stroke. The next thing I want to mention is completion of strokes. So when I was learning massage, we would do things like, you know, the ringing motion. So I'd be ringing here, and then, you know, I'd do some other things on the top, and then I would be ringing down here. And one time I had this 9-year-old boy as a client, and he said, "Why don't you do the whole arm all at once?" And as soon as he said it, I realized, of course I should do that, because it's really important to get not just the belly of the muscle, but the tendons and all the way to the attachment. And you don't want to have the same pressure on all of those areas, but you want to cover those areas. So you want to start up here, all the way up at the bone, and then, you know, I'm doing a more rigorous technique here, and then as I go over the elbow, I'm lightening up, but I'm not skipping it. And I'm gonna go all the way down, you know, so I'm finishing it off just by sliding. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm just sliding down at the end. You just want to address the entire muscle, even if you're not doing exactly the same work on it. And that completion can really feel good when you're receiving it. Receiving massage for self-care is extremely important, but you know what? It's not the only reason to receive massage. You learn a lot from getting massage, and it reminds you of the experience that your clients are having on the table. So recently, you know, I got a massage and I had to wear a mask, and one of my clients the week before had complained about you know, how hard it was to breathe, and I totally got it as soon as I got on the table. Like, because my other clients hadn't mentioned it, I was like, well, you know, it's not that big of a deal. And then I actually received my massage and was like, oh my God, I can hardly breathe. And so I pulled the mask and gave my nose a little bit of room. But it was just a good reminder to me of why it's so important for me to get massage. And the other thing is, you know, I mean, from a really good massage, I don't learn a heck of a lot because I get very zoned as soon as it starts, or pretty soon after it starts. I might learn something right at the beginning, but not you know, after like 10 minutes. But if I'm not getting a good massage, or if I'm getting a mediocre massage, or if something doesn't feel good, I will notice that and learn from it. So sometimes I'll just realize, I hope I'm not pushing as hard as she does, in that area or for my clients. So, it's very good for you to receive massage, almost as a, continuing education thing as well as a self-care thing. And here's something that I learned. I'm gonna be using towels. So a person recently, so one thing you want to do when you're using towels is to make sure that the client is okay with it beforehand, and also to mention right before you do it if it's the first time, just so they know it's going to happen. But I got a massage and they did the towels, and then she took the towel off and didn't dry it, and it made me cold immediately. And one time she just pulled up the sheet, and that, the sheet got a little damp, and even before that, I just still felt wet. So that was, another case where I learned something really valuable that I don't think I would have known, is how important the drying part is in using towels. So I just dry this off a little bit. And then pull this up, and pull this out. I do some work with my thumbs. This is one of the places where I use my thumbs, but most of the work that I do these days, I don't use my thumbs at all. And what I use instead are the backs of my hands. I'll use the heels of my hands. I'll use my forearms. Occasionally I use my elbows, not all that much, but I just use a lot of different parts of my body rather than just my thumbs. And that again is kind of a self-preservation thing. One of the things I was taught that I differ from definitely in this practice is what to do when a client falls asleep. So I was taught that what you do is you take your hands off, you stop working, and then eventually the person wakes up, and then you continue on. I don't like to interrupt the massage and interrupt the person's experience, mainly because, as I've mentioned before, we tend to do what we like to have done with us. And I'm not crazy about it when people stop doing a massage for me and wake me up. Typically, I find that my clients only sleep maybe 15 minutes. 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, that kind of a thing. It's fairly short, and I think that it's very, very good for them to have that sleep, if that's okay with them. Now, some people want to be woken up. They don't want to miss a thing. So that's fine too. I will do that if people want that. But I don't worry too much about it if they do fall asleep. And another thing is talking. So obviously what I'm demonstrating here is not what I would normally do. So when I do massages, I personally don't talk very much. If a client is chatty, that's okay with me. It's just not going to be the same kind of massage. And some people just are chatty. I try not to contribute to the chat, but if somebody wants to be chatty, that's fine. But I try not to do too much talking myself, partly because it distracts me. and partly because it changes the energy. One thing I really discourage people from doing is saying anything during the massage. Now this is, again, in this kind of massage where it's meant to be very deeply, deeply relaxing. I stay away from anything judgmental, or that could be perceived as judgmental. So even something like, I'm just going to take my hands off him right now, even something like, wow, that's really tight, or you really should get massage more often, or even you lost weight, wow. Anything that might be perceived by the client as a judgment on their body, when you have your hands on them and when they are really relaxed, they're very vulnerable to you. And so I'm sure you were taught this in school, but I think it's always worth mentioning, partly because I've had it happen so often in my own massages that I'm receiving, where people will say things like that. I think it's really important to just not contribute to any issues that the person might have about their bodies. I want to demonstrate a little different draping technique than I was taught in school. They may be teaching it differently, or different teachers teach different things, but I'm just going to go over that, and then another couple of ideas and suggestions. So the way I was taught to do draping on the legs was to tuck the sheet under the other leg, the opposite leg from what I'm working on. But I find, from my own personal experience receiving massages, that can leave a little bit of a drafty area, and it doesn't make me feel that secure. So if I pull it underneath like this, then it's very sealed, very secure here, and it doesn't matter what I do, I'm not gonna, leave a gap. So that's what I would recommend on the legs, front and back. With respect to caffeine and food, I know that everybody knows not to drink alcohol, not to eat close to when they're doing a massage, to brush their teeth before they do a massage. But caffeine is definitely going to affect your energy. And, it depends on what kind of work you're doing. If you're in a physical therapy environment and you're, bright lights and you're talking to people, then it probably doesn't matter so much. But if you're doing a massage that is meant to be, very deeply relaxing, you have to be also deeply relaxed. So I would suggest not having caffeine for at least 4 hours before you do a massage. And I'll just address, my linens. My linens are all 100% cotton. And I do that because, number one, I can wash them all, including the towels, so I don't use a blanket because I can't wash that for every single client. And even before the COVID thing, I just, anything that touches a client gets washed on extra hot, in extra hot water. And if you try to wash, and maybe you already know this, but linens that have polyester in them, if you wash them on hot, then you're probably going to set any oil stains that are in there instead of washing them out. So that's just a little suggestion. One final note, not everybody is going to love your massage. I'm sure a lot of people will, but not everyone. So don't take it personally. It's a very personal choice on the part of the client, and I sometimes will go to someone for a year or two, love them, but then I'm just in the mood for something different. I want to try something different. So don't take it personally. But if you do get feedback, it's good to listen to it just in case it has any bearing on what you're doing and what you would like to do. And I have a sheet that I give people after a few visits, and it's very simple. It says, what did you like best? What could you do without? And is there anything about the environment, music, temperature, etc., that you would like to give me feedback on? And that can help you get some really concrete feedback. So that's it. Thank you so much for sticking through it. And please like and subscribe, and see you soon.